and welcome back to the Across the Pod NFL podcast. We are here for another team season preview, and this time it's a turn of the Buffalo Bills. And for part one, it is a two-part special. For part one, here with me, returning to the show, a good friend of mine, all the way from Buffalo. With me today is Hit the Showers is David Kaprosch. David, how are things?
How are you doing? Everything's well. Everything's well. Enjoying a nice Buffalo summer. So everything included with, again, summertime in the 716 in Buffalo. So fantastic. How about you?
I'm all good, mate. I'm all good. It's not been quite the summer we all wanted in the UK. It's been about for every 4 days of sun, it's been about 10 days of either cold or wet. It's been constant grey clouds, and there's not been many days of summer where you can go out in t-shirt and shorts. I mean, there's been a lot of humid days. There's been a lot of, days where it's warm still, but it's like grey clouds. But yeah, not been a great summer in the UK. Definitely one we've not really enjoyed too much. Not too many sunny days.
At least you get a few warm days mixed in there.
I know we got some. I mean, I was in what day was it? It was on the Sunday this weekend. It was because I was cat sitting for my parents on the Sunday, but not on the Saturday. And Saturday was raining and wet, and Sunday when I had to be around the house, that's where they start to be sunny. So that was really annoying. But yeah,
It's that way.
yeah. I mean, I'm sure it's nowhere near as cold as what you guys experience in Buffalo in the winter. But yeah, I've never worn a coat before in July. Let's put it that way. Not a thick coat, like quite a thin coat, but still, I don't think I'm needing that when I put it away in early May. But in a few months, we'll be even colder, so we'll be thankful we had at least some warmth in the air.
Yeah, hopefully the C word, as in cold, doesn't show up here until like after Christmas. That's stretching here, as you know.
Yeah, I mean that is wishful thinking. I mean, when I was there, I think I got lucky, didn't I? Because I think when I was there, you were all saying how the fact that I was wearing a t-shirt in October in Buffalo was a miracle.
Could be, yeah. I remember telling you anytime in October, from the beginning to the end of October, we could be in shorts and t-shirts early October, and we could be in a couple of layers and shoveling snow by Halloween. So everything in between. So you never know what you're gonna get up here.
No, it really isn't. And it is. We all love watching cold weather games on TV. I love watching a snow game on TV, but I mean, maybe you're used to it, maybe you're fine with it, but I can imagine it's a different beast when you're actually at the stadium experiencing the cold in late November, early December.
Well, as always, you got to dress for it, and if you live in the Northeast, you should know how to dress for it. If you don't, then problems. But yeah, the NFL, they love those games when it's either raining, especially the snow. It just looks so good on TV, and the atmosphere and the fans, and they'll that'll never end. That'll never.
I remember when we played you a couple of years ago, was it week 14 with snow there? And I remember when we played Chiefs in the wildcard round most recently, and boy, those two games looked extremely cold.
That Chiefs Miami game, that was very extreme, even for Buffalo standards. I mean, you're looking at near 0 degree temperatures and wind chills well below 0 Fahrenheit. So, yeah, those are few and far between. I mean, that's more Green Bay, Minnesota temperatures that they're used to, especially at Lambeau. But you never know. You never know.
Yeah, it's I know a couple that I went to that Chiefs game against Dolphins, and yeah, they're telling me just they've never been that cold in their life before. I want to say for those in the UK, I want to say it was something like -10 or -20 degrees Celsius. I think it was a record the fourth coldest game in NFL history. I think it went down as so. I dread to think what the other three were because that looked so cold, and I saw people, whose beers were you bring the beer out for a second in the cold, and straight away it just foams up and just freezes. It didn't look enjoyable. It didn't look like something I'd want to be ever a part of.
That, I mean, and then I remember them saying it during the game and leading up to it. I mean, that's dangerous cold. That's nothing to mess with. It really isn't. And if you're not prepared for it, you could be in some trouble. And I'm sure, you know, I don't remember the reports, but there was at least a couple of handfuls of fans that were end up getting themselves in trouble with frostbite and whatever.
Well, there was a report I read somewhere. I don't know whether it was weeks or days or even a month or two after the game happened, but people were like losing limbs. I think there's a study going around that a few people actually had to get some parts of their bodies amputated from the effects of the cold. I remember seeing on TV there was one guy with his top off. You always see it on TV all the time. Some crazy idiot who's got his top off, and normally beer induced and trying to show off in front of his mates. But yeah, I think I always think about that. It's like that's just that is, as you say, exactly dangerous. And I don't think there's. I'd much rather watch that game in the comfort of my own home with the fire on, hot chocolate or like a hot cup of tea in your hand, in your dressing gown. I think that for me sounds way better than having to get down to the game and experiencing that level of cold. I think that sometimes I think, yeah, I love watching games live, but I think there's some games where there's a limit and there's a line. I think that would be too much for me.
For me, that would probably, I mean, I would definitely go, but yeah, you again, you have to be prepared for it. You just layer and layer and layer up, and just and don't ignore the symptoms if they start. You gotta get inside and get warm if it gets to that point.
Can you recall a game in Buffalo? Maybe one game that stands out to you, maybe as the coldest you've ever felt at a Bills game? Is there one in your many years of going to Bills games? Is there maybe one game that stands out as being the coldest you've experienced?
Um, the Super Bowl run. This was not the Raiders 51-3 championship game, but it was 2 seasons later. We hosted them in a divisional playoff game, and it was game time temperature was hovering around 10, and the wind chill was like 30 below. And this is when I used to wear the getup like Captain America, and I had all these layers on, and I had the foot warmers in my boots. And I remember taking my foot out of the boot because I must have got a dud because this foot warmer was literally burning my foot. Pretty below wind chill. And the guy's looking at me and goes, "What are you doing?" I go, "My foot's on fire." I had to take my foot out for a second and put a different hand warmer in there or foot warmer in there because my toes were like burning, which was kind of wild for especially in a game like that and as cold as it was. But yeah, that was probably um there was a Jets game, I think the same year going to clinch the playoffs, I think, or in and around then. It was about the same, about 30, close to 30 below, zero wind chill. And then that Raiders playoff game. Those are probably the two that really stuck out.
Yeah, I can only imagine just how cold they were. Now we are going to skip slightly to one of the questions I wanted to ask earlier, but as talking about Buffalo and your see live in Buffalo, when I was there last time with you, we also I got to look at the stadium being built, and that's obviously one of the things that I believe is being earmarked for 2026. Just how's obviously since I've been there, it's been a few months since I imagine there's been more development, especially in the off season. And obviously those who are keen, there is a YouTube channel where you can watch it live, hanging off a tree with a view of the stadium. But yeah, what's the update on the stadium? How's it looking now compared to when I was there?
Drove by actually a few days ago. I was out that way with my brother, and we got to, once we're out that way, and it's not, I mean, it's not far from my house. So, yeah, we did a slow drive by, and yeah, the skeleton, it's like the lower level is fully enclosed, and they've already got the second level up, and they're working on the third level. They're saying probably by sometime September, October, the structural a majority of the structural steel of the frame should be done, and you're going to start to see that canopy start to take shape too. So, yeah, there's a couple of YouTube channels, and all you got to go just when you got on YouTube, just punch in Buffalo New Buffalo Stadium or New Highmark Stadium, and there's a few of them. They got ones with drone footage or going over going over top, and every now and again, BuffaloBills.com they'll do their own version of it too. Like they'll get a drone shot, or they'll get a camera crew with hard hats, and they'll go right into the belly of the beast and get some inside photos. But yeah, it's as of this week, they said they're right on schedule. Actually, they may be a little bit ahead of schedule. The weather, we had a good winter, which helped um, to continue that. And it's crazy when they broke ground literally a year ago, June, to where it is now. It's amazing how much they've gotten done.
Well, I'm sure, like many of you, probably a little bit of sadness about leaving Highmark, but at the same time, I'm sure you're looking forward to this new stadium because it's sure to be, yeah, from what I've seen, a massive, massive stadium. So, and I can't wait to go there. My plan is to make the trip back to Buffalo whenever we first play you guys in Buffalo, provided it's not around Christmas time, and it's not around that time of year. I do plan on making the trip down because I want to see, yeah, a brand new stadium. And yeah, I think ever since I've started to get into the NFL, and I think ever since the last couple of years when the Bills Dolphins rivalry has intensified more and more in modern times, like it was in the old days, I definitely have a desire to go watch Bills Dolphins in Buffalo. So I am looking forward to yeah, experiencing that in hopefully, provided everything goes to plan in 2 years' time. So yeah, looking forward to that, and hopefully by then uh, we can beat you because that's something we haven't done really since Josh Allen came into the league. So hopefully that can change.
Yeah, it's been wild. Just and for me, growing up, being born in the '60s and watching that Miami team in the '70s, beat us time and time again to now, you know, I'm not shedding any tears that we're beating that team the way we are. But as you know, as they say, tables can flip, you know, and that,
Especially in Buffalo.
yes, no pun there with the smashing of the tables. But yeah, as soon as they open in 26 and whenever you're ready to come out, obviously you got a place to stay, so we'll see what happens. But the
Definitely.
stadium itself is supposed to. I've seen a like a big size tabletop model of it, and this place is going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing.
It does look a bit similar to the Tottenham Stadium, I think. I don't know whether they looked at that and drawn inspiration from the Tottenham Stadium in London, but there's definitely similarities between the two. But yeah, does any part of you sort of feel sad about leaving Highmark? Because obviously, for yourself, a lot of memories. You've been there for a long time. Is that almost bittersweet because you're getting a new stadium, you'd think more money coming in, but at the same time the stadium has brought you guys so many good memories and it's been there for so many years. Does that almost come with a little tinge of sadness?
Absolutely. Every time, if and my girlfriend Patty says to say hello as well. So,
Oh, yeah. Nigel says hello back.
oh Nigel, I said hello. Yeah, whenever we're out that way, or the Bills will just come up in a conversation, but most times if we're out towards Orchard Park and we happen to go by it, whatever on the main highway, she'll look at me and I'll look at her and I just shake my head because she knows it's gonna be tough. I'm ugh, I'm lumping up just thinking about it. It'll be tough. Definitely bittersweet. I mean, as exciting as it will be to go to a new building, um, for me I spent more than half my life in that building, and it'll be tough. Definitely be tough.
Yeah,
I think they
exactly.
got heard something today that they got some cool plans for next season, being the final one and stuff leading up to it. When they close the doors of the place, and ooh, I don't even want to think about
No,
it.
I can imagine it's going to be an emotional one, I'm sure. Now going on to this season, um, looking into the main ins and outs. The main ins include the likes of um, no real major income issue. You look at the likes of players returning such as Mitch Trubisky and Matt Hack. Other players coming in, the likes of Curtis Samuel, Matt Collins, Lyle Collins, Dion Jones, KJ Hamler, Chase Claypool. We are recording this podcast about a few days before it's been released, so we may miss some people out. Some news may have broken. So if you haven't heard certain news that come out, like maybe Devontae Adams gone to the Bills, then apologies for that. And then main outs include the likes of Siran Neal and Jordan Poyer to the Dolphins, Naeem Hines, AJ Klein, Josh Norman, Deontay Hardy, Gabe Davis, of course, a big one, Stephon Digg, Leonard Floyd, Micah Hyde, Shaq Lawson, Trey White, and Trent Sherfield. And then in terms of the draft, just some main highlight picks include Keon Coleman, the wide receiver, going 33rd overall out of Florida State. Other ones include Cole Bishop, the safety out of Utah, defensive tackle Dwayne Carter out of Duke, and then finally one that from me and many UK fans have a lot of personal love towards, your pick, 221st overall, the British offensive guard out of the International Pathway Program, Travis Clayton, who I had the pleasure of being in the same room as just a few weeks ago in Loughborough. Was meant to interview him, but sadly he wasn't available. He was a bit busy. But yeah, so I have been in the same room as a Bill, which I'm sure many Bills fans like yourself would love to hear. Whether he'll play in the first year, I don't know. But yeah, that's obviously seeing a British player. You've seen British players all the time come into the league, Jay Jai, Fa Abada, but they've never been on the actual draft night coming on the stage. And I thought that was really nice to see, coming on with his Union Jack flag and everything else. It was really cool to see. But yeah, what was your take overall on the off season as a whole for your team?
I mean, like Bean's done since he's been here. He fills those holes. I mean, barring we had some issues with the cap going into it, but with Bean, of course, I'm a homer and that's my team, but just how he's handled the offseason as far as plugging in guys, got the second tier free agents, that we brought in, and then the draft. They drafted for need. I mean, between two defensive ends, a linebacker, a wide receiver. They needed maybe not a true, wide receiver one, but with the guys they brought in the offseason, the free agents, the names you mentioned, Chase Claypool being one. That's who I'm going to keep an eye on. I mean, for him, it's basically be a good soldier, try and make an NFL roster without being an idiot, so you can sign on elsewhere if by chance you get cut here. Because if not, if he blows this, he'll be heading to the Canadian Football League more than likely.
Yeah, I mean, he had such a good first year, half a season. I mean, when he first came through to the Steelers, he was this real sort of breakout guy, and everyone was amazed that he'd gone to the Steelers and he's doing so well. But that's really as far as it went for him. I mean, I'm going to try and find his stats now. So his first year, he had 800 yards, 873 yards, 9 touchdowns, albeit in a year where there's no fans. And then the following year, 860 yards again, just 2 touchdowns. And then since then, in 2022, 311 yards with the Steelers and 140 with the Bears, just 1 touchdown in total. And then 1 touchdown in total in 2023, and only 51 yards to the Bears and 26 to the Dolphins. So it's not been great at all for him. It really hasn't. But the thing is, it's there. He's shown you, albeit for one season, again, without fans in the stadium, he has shown he's got something. He just hasn't shown it in a long time. And there's also the character issues, which have really, hasn't helped because, it was one thing. Like Stephon Diggs is a major sort of, I'm not going to say locker room cancer, but he is sort of definitely can be a negative influence. But that he's gonna on the field, on his day, he can be one of the best wide receivers in the league. Whereas if you're causing trouble and also aren't playing that well, that's not a good combination. And I'm seeing reports that he's doing really well in OTAs now. I don't know whether it's because there's not a lot of great wide receivers out there at the moment for the Bills. There's not the strongest room in the league, NFL wise. So I don't know whether it's down to him actually learning his lesson and playing well, or whether it's because there's not really much talent there. But of course, I think for me personally, I think what I'm thinking of Bills I'm going to see is a Bills where you probably use Dalton Kincaid in like a Travis Kelce sort of role, where he's probably going to be Josh Allen's main go-to guy to throw to. I think Keon Coleman, he's a rookie, so he may need time to develop, but I think he's seen as probably the next guy to come in and do that. But I do feel like, yeah, that's what they've got planned is probably to use Josh Allen's legs. But also, yeah, I think Dalton Kincaid could be a guy who really has a real breakthrough year, I think, in 2024.
especially with a Joe Brady offense who took over, midstream when they fired Dorsey. And if you look at the second half when Brady took over, the targets that were Diggs drops. I don't want to use the word significantly, but they definitely dropped because they ran the ball more, which was no secret either. But and I think now with Joe Brady taking over, he's got the full book in his hand now, and I think that takes the pressure off of Josh to have to not find 14 like every play or every other play or whatever his number was called, enforcing it, which we've seen. I think it's the, I don't want to say it's going to be a spread offense, but I think he's the pressure. Like I said, the pressure is off. I think for 17 to throw the ball around to other targets, Shakir being one. Curtis Samuel's he's gonna be the workhorse. I think they're already saying he's gonna line up in the slot. He's gonna line up in the backfield, and with him and Cooked, and then the kid Davis, the rookie from Kentucky, and look up his story. The kid Ray Davis, the running back. What an amazing story. And he's already 25, 26 years old and coming from a broken home, living out in the West Coast. But when you get a chance, read that story. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing. Um, and don't forget, Frank Gore Jr. went undrafted.
Of course,
And
yeah, Frank, yeah, I forgot about that.
he wanted to go to Buffalo. He heard good things from his dad when his dad was here for a year. So don't sleep on him either. He's got a massive, massive chip on his shoulder coming in after not being drafted at all. So it's shaping up to be a good camp, especially offensively.
Yeah, and I think that the big thing I think is one of two ways. You can look at one way, go, you've lost your best receiver, and all that kind of stuff attached, and how you're going to replace him. But I think from how it ended, really, in for exactly what you're saying, I think the way it ended, it wasn't great. I think in most years he sort of did speak out in negative ways, and he is the kind of guy who, if it's not all about him, he doesn't like that. So I think, in a way, I think whilst on one hand you're losing a top receiver who still is on his day, you also you're also getting rid of that sort of that negative influence. I think now, exactly what you're saying, they're not going to have to target him all the time, and I think that's going to be great. And I think we'll see a lot more of James Cook getting involved more. Obviously, you mentioned Kincaid, and I think we'll see the likes of Keon Coleman getting involved as well. I think Matt Collins can still offer something. He's been on some bad teams recently, some bad quarterbacks. I think give him a good quarterback to give him the ball. I think that can make a difference. I think Curtis Samuel, the player, I think is extremely underrated in the NFL. Again, he's been on some bad teams. I think give him a good quarterback again. I think that's going to be great. And yeah, I think overall it's a team that even with the losses, I think you lost some key players like Jordan Poyer on defense, leaders. I think playoffs are still a factor. Whether you win the division, I don't know. It's going to be a tough one this year for you. I think it's going to be a tighter AFC East once again. But you're going to make the playoffs. You think something drastically wrong happens. But it's been a problem the last few years in terms of this team getting over that hump. You think about the AFC Championship lost to the Chiefs, the multiple divisional round losses to the Chiefs as well, and one to the Texans, I think, early on in Josh Allen's career. What do you think this year for both Allen, McDermott, and the Bills in general? What do you think is going to take from the Bills to get over that hump and finally, whether it's beat the Chiefs or make a Super Bowl again? What do you think it's going to take? Because there's been a lot of near misses in the last few years.
I mean, you could say, especially in Buffalo, I think the thing is don't coach scared. Kind of comes into play, especially the 13-second game. I mean that. That'll live. That's as bad as wide right from the Super Bowl years, but at least for a lot of us. Um, I mean, you follow the league. It's still a lot of luck. You know, right calls at the right time. You know, you speaking of Diggs, you had that drop with about 4 minutes left, 5 minutes left in that game. I mean, and it was coming right towards me, and I'm thinking, how did you like? I mean, and it happens even to the Hall of Famers. They're going to drop a pass or miss a tackle or whatever. But man, it just and that's his catch. I mean, that he's done that his career in Buffalo. You know, um, again, I think it just comes down to the coaching and the right call at the right time. Game situation. Um, I mean, this roster is still good. It's been good almost from day one when Bean and Dermott took over. They're just mentally they're just going to have to get past it if they face them again. And I welcome it. I mean, I'll keep taking your swings against the king of the AFC, the king of the NFL right now, the Chiefs. But you got to keep swinging. Can't be scared. Don't play scared, and don't coach scared.
Yeah, I mean,
You
the
know,
law of averages suggests that you play the Chiefs in 7 playoff games in Josh Allen's career, he's going to win one at some point. You would think the Chiefs can't. It goes for any sport. Any team that dominates any sport. At some point, they lose games. No one wins games for 5 years straight and never loses, unless you're looking at Phil Taylor and darts. But I think it reminds me so much of the Manning Brady era. You've got Brady being the goat, and then Manning constantly losing to Patriots and Brady, but eventually he got that win, and I think that will happen one day with the Bills. I don't know whether it will come the next year because I think there's obviously a new receiver in Keon Coleman and young tight end and Kincaid. I think are the future for Josh Allen as well as James Cook. I think give it even if it means when Kelsey and Reed are gone at the Chiefs, particularly Kelsey, I think then you got more of a chance. I think he'll come one day, whether that's beating the Chiefs or whether that's just making a Super Bowl. I think Josh Allen, everyone likes to go about his interceptions, but I think he also brings the team back straight away with his arm, and he's the kind of guy that he could easily throw three interceptions and then throw for 3 more touchdowns in the next quarter and a half. I think yeah, he can be a bit careless with the ball, but I think also he's the reason why you're in these games. He's the reason why you're in these positions. I think he is, for me, easily a top 3 quarterback, and I think he is. I hate watching him because he always seems to give us a hard time, but I think he is one of the more electric quarterbacks to watch in the league. And if it wasn't for the fact he's in my division, I think I would like watching him a hell of a lot more than I do now. So yeah, I think he is on his day so good, and I think he is so electric, and his arm is just easy. Well, I think easy one of the best in the league, certainly one of the strongest. And I think, yeah, eventually his day will come. The only issue I've got is the fact that he does have a similar kind of body to Cam Newton. I do worry about maybe the hits he takes and how long that will last for him in his career. I think we also saw Cam Newton's career decline quite quickly due to, I think, the hits he took in his career. So that's my only worry about Josh Allen. I think Peyton Manning didn't have that problem about using his body. He never ran, apart from that one amazing bootleg play he had years ago for the Broncos. So that's my only worry, that Allen could be a victim of too many hits and maybe his body failing him earlier than other quarterbacks per se. So that's my only real worry about him moving forward.
I know when it's like that here when you watch him, you're gasping or you're exhilarated watching him make a play with his feet. It's crazy. We get the I don't want to use the word best, but the best of both worlds as far as your anxiety when after he takes a shot or he's trying to get out of bounds or slides. I mean, and then keep telling him we'll hear it all summer too. Like, yeah, if you ask go ask McDermott, like, hey, have you talked to Josh about sliding more? And I guarantee McDermott will just give me a smirk and go, yeah, we always tell him if you can slide, slide. It'll be another year of that, and you know, our fortunes ride with him. I mean, there's no secret. You, Trubisky's not going to do what Josh Allen can do. got to help us if he gets hurt. So, you know, it's the NFL. You got to keep your quarterback upright, and you know, knock on wood. That continues, and for every quarterback, I just text the Kansas City guys that they're supposed to be coming out here for that game in November. Um, every every summer, I just do a quick little prayer. I look up and just keep everybody in the league safe. You don't want nobody getting hurt in training camp. In the preseason games leading into September, and and that doesn't change this year either. It's just you want everybody healthy, every team, every player. You don't want, especially a quarterback. My gosh, your fortune's right on that guy under center with every team in the league.
Absolutely. I think we've seen one occasion in the last, certainly in my time watching it, in the last 20 years where the backups won the Super Bowl in Nick Foles. You can look at Tom Brady, but he ended up being who he is. But yeah, I can only think of one occasion where the quarterback who wins the Super Bowl didn't start for the team at the start of the year. So I think, yeah, it's also important. If you lose your quarterback, as the Bengals fans, well known the last few years, if you lose your quarterback, your season's done. We have got about 8 minutes left of the recording, so we'll quickly go through our final segment, which is going to be our win, loss, tie section. So if you are listening at home and aren't familiar with the concept, each fan that comes on predicts their team's record by going through each game of the season and answering with a win, loss, tie. So, Dave, in week one, you're at home to the Arizona Cardinals. Win, loss, or tie?
Oh, they should. I mean, home opener building. That place will be juiced up and ready to go. Yeah, Bills win.
So week two is the one I'm looking forward to you answer the most. It's a road game at the Dolphins.
That's going to be tough, obviously, because Miami's home opener would be the same, as week one. So this will be game number 2 for them at home. So we're not walking into a home opener per se, but a night game in that building. I mean, I'd say, with the way Buffalo's beaten Miami the last, few years, I'm curious to pick Miami, but I can't. Bills by a field goal.
Yeah, it's a tough one because on one hand, the Bills have been, I think Josh Allen's 8-2 against the Dolphins in his career, but on the other hand, the Dolphins in weeks 1 to 11 are a whole different beast to the Dolphins at weeks 12 to 18. So, yeah, I think we could win this one. It's our one chance to do it because it's early on in the season. We do well early on. So, but I think also we do struggle against the Bills. Week 3 is a home game against the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Jacksonville Jaguars, Monday Night Football, actually. So again, another juiced up crowd for a night game. I think it left a bad taste in their mouth playing, after we got beat by them in London last October. Yeah, Bills at home. Bills should win.
Week 4 is probably one of your hardest games of the season on the road to the Ravens.
Ravens Sunday night. Again, they always play tough. I mean, I might have to give the edge to Baltimore.
Okay. Then week 5 is the Stephon Diggs Bowl as you travel to Houston to take on the Texans.
Yeah, this is the second of 3 consecutive road games for the Bills. I like the Bills in this one. I'm a fan of CJ Stroud, especially what he did last year. But I think coming off a loss, the Bills don't lose 2 in a row under this regime. So I got to go Buffalo.
Okay, then week 6 is a road game against the New York Jets.
Monday night in the Meadowlands. Always a treat. My goodness. Will Aaron Rodgers will he be playing by week 4?
Hopefully more than 4 snaps anyway.
It's week 6, right? Yeah, if he's playing, I might have to give the slight edge to the Jets.
Okay, so week 7, you host the Tennessee Titans.
The rebuilding Tennessee Titans, new coach, second-year quarterback. Again, Buffalo at home, 1:00 game. Yeah, Bills.
Okay, so week 8, you're traveling to the fantastic Lumen Field to take on the Seahawks.
It'll be my that'll be my second road game because I will be attending the Miami game.
Oh, amazing! I love that stadium so much.
When I went there 20 years ago when Bledsoe was a quarterback, and my buddy Dave and I, who you met,
Yeah.
went out there for just we did the tour of it the day on Saturday, the game before or the day before, and amazing. When I always said between Baltimore and Seattle, if the Bills had to build a new stadium, I was leaning towards Seattle. It's just the way it's set up and the stands, and you're pretty you're pretty close to the field, and um, I like the Bills in this one. I know they don't travel well out west, but um, yeah, I'll take the Bills in this one. I'm not
Okay.
a big Geno Smith believer. I don't know. I mean, and again, first year head coach. Um, yeah, definitely the Bills.
Yeah, I think Gino is a definition of average quarterback. I think he's not going to wow you, but he's not going to be terrible. I think he's just very, very average. I think, yeah, that's where they are at the moment. The Seahawks, they scream 7-win season. Week 9, you're at home again, this time against the Dolphins.
The return game. I know it's weird playing both games before December.
Thankfully for us.
I don't hate it. Yeah, Bills at home, divisional game. I mean, you know how important those are. And yeah, the Bills at home, no question.
So then you go into week 10 on the road to the Colts.
Colts. Who's the quarterback? What is it? Richardson,
Yeah.
right? Off an injury. Another kid I was kind of impressed with prior to his injury. Um, but you don't know what you're getting with the Colts. That's the thing. They got a great offensive line. Um, Defensively, they're not bad. But Bills in a dome in Indy, I'll take 17 and the Bills all day on that one.
Okay, so then week 11, you host the Chiefs.
The Chiefs, the late game on Sunday, oh, the 425, Jim Nance, Tony Romo game. um, yeah, Bills at home. They'll have a nasty taste in their mouth, but you know, it's funny how the Bills have won in Kansas City outside of the playoff games, and then Kansas City comes to Buffalo, and it beats us in a playoff game. So I'll take the Bills in a close one.
Okay, so you got week 12 bye before home game week 13 against the 49ers.
Sunday night football, Bills Niners. This one could go down if the weather's like if there's a fast track and the weather's not a factor. Um, this one will come. This one could come down to the wire as well. I like the Bills at home.
Okay, and then week 14, week 15, road games against the Panthers and the Lions.
Um, we got the Rams.
Oh, sorry, my L looks like a C. I do apologize. The Rams and the Lions.
Um, Another trip out west coming off a probably an emotional Sunday night game. I think the Bills are going to stub their toe on this one. I think of the Rams.
Okay, then the Lions in week 15.
Ooh, that's going to be a good one. Another late afternoon game. Um, Again, the Bills don't lose two in a row. I give the slight edge to Buffalo.
Okay, and then finally, week 16, week 17, and week 18, Bills, Pats, Jets, Pats.
I know, and that's weird playing the Pats 2 out of the last 3 weeks, end of the season, which is crazy. Yeah, Bills.
So Dave's recording with me did cut to an end before we got to hear his final 3 games prediction. So Dave did go for a win against the Patriots in week 16, a win against the Jets in week 17, and then a loss against the Patriots in week 18. And he went on to tell me that would be after 12-5 record. He would then go on and see the Bills beat the Chiefs finally in the AFC Championship game and go on in an overtime thriller. He told me as well. That's not the hell of a game. And then he told me they would go on and win the Super Bowl in New Orleans. So that is part 1 out the way. as you can see as well, because my hair has changed since that episode. I've had a haircut since that first recording. Only happened yesterday as well. So for part 2, I brought another Bills guest on the podcast. He was on last year's and the year before's Bills season preview. Back with me today is Charlie Nelson. Charlie, first of all, how are things?
Yeah, great, thank you. I mean, we're into the training camp period now, I guess. So it's some football news is beginning to start to filter out, and we're not quite in the dog days of the off season anymore. But no, excited to get this season started and at least get into some preseason games. That'll be nice.
Yeah, it's do you watch preseason? Because I enjoyed the first week because it's the first week back in so long after all this time. So I will actually watch the first week, but I tend to then switch off after the first week. I find it's not the players that you're watching in the regular season. It's just players trying to fight for a spot. I do find it hard to watch the preseason, but do you watch preseason?
I do. I watch it all, and I think a lot of Bills fans do. We're a fan base that gets excited by the fifth choice safety on the roster. we we need help, I think. But yeah, I do. I enjoy seeing, especially the younger players, the draft picks. There's quite a lot in our draft this year that probably not going to play that much this year, but maybe will develop in the future. So I always enjoy seeing those players because I scout a lot during the off season. It's always nice to see how those players start to embed into the build system. So yeah, I'm a bit of a super geek when it comes to watching these players and the off season. I watch everything.
Well, of course, if you aren't aware of Charlie, he does host a podcast called Bills from Afar podcast. If you are looking for a Bills podcast to listen to, then make sure to give Charlie's podcast, Bills from Afar, a follow. I want to talk through the ins and outs in free agency and the draft. So in terms of the free agency, you took the likes of KJ Hamler, Matt Collins, Curtis Samuel came through the door, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, La'el Collins, Deion Jones, Chase Claypool, as well as the likes of Matt Hackett and Mitch Trubisky returning. And then the main outs include both Siran Neal and Jordan Poyer going to the Dolphins, Nyheim Hines, AJ Klein, Josh Norman, Dion Hardy, Gabe Davis, of course, the big one, Stephon Diggs, Leonard Floyd, Micah Hyde, Shaq Lawson, Trey White, and Trent Sherfield. Then going on to the NFL draft this year. So you took Keon Coleman, receiver out of Florida State, 33rd overall. 60th overall went to Cole Bishop, safety out of Utah. Dwayne Carter went defensive tackle Duke. Also later on in the draft, Dave in part 1 did make me aware of Ray Davis, the running back out of Kentucky, who's got an amazing story. And then finally, one for us Brits in the 221st overall pick. The Bills took Travis Clayton, I should say, the offensive guard out of the international pathway all the way from Basingstoke. And what amazed me most about that was the fact that he was actually went on the stage, which Jay Ajayi has been in the NFL, F.A. Abada, O.C. Manura. Actually, O.C. He went through college, but yeah, it's rare you see a Brit actually go on stage with the Union Jack on his back. That was great to see for me. I loved seeing that, and I was actually in his presence only a month ago at the Loughborough event, NFL Academy event. He was in the same room as me. Was meant to interview him, but he was just way too busy to have a chance to interview him. But that was still cool to be around him, and yeah, he seemed like a very, very nice guy. But for you, Charlie, overall, your take on your team's off season?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a mini reset, really. Obviously, the headline is Stephon Diggs moving on. It's funny when you look at production from Diggs and Davis towards the second half of last season. Actually, it was really, really low, really quite poor. A lot of drop catches, a lot of not even getting targets, and the offense was pretty much held up by the likes of James Cook. You saw a much more of a focus on the running game. We saw Khalil Shakir, Dalton Kincaid really taking the slack. And if you look at the Bills' season and their record last season, the second half was the strongest part. That was where they went on that run to obviously beat Miami to the divisional title. And so in many cases, it's not quite as bad as perhaps some Bills fans feared in terms of losing Diggs, because in terms of his production, it really had dropped off quite considerably. And maybe part of that was the scheme change. We had Joe Brady taking over offensive coordinator. Part of it, perhaps preparing to get to walk away from Diggs in the future. It was clear that things were not good behind the scenes. That's been rumbling along for a couple of seasons now. And so, yeah, it's been we now have the sort of island of misfit toys in terms of the wide receiver room. You listed those out, and I think in terms of replacing his production, I think that's actually pretty nice. I think that it will be a good room, and I think that some players like Khalil Shakir and Dalton Kincaid will take another step forward to carry the load. So I think actually there's a lot to be excited about there. Even Chase Claypool is a bit of a wild card. I think there's a lot of feeling that he might be that sixth wide receiver on the roster. So if he's a bit of a zero risk reclamation project, if we can get something out of him like we saw in Pittsburgh, then that would be amazing. So that's on the offensive side of the ball. I think most people feel pretty good. We obviously added a nice backup running back as well, as you mentioned earlier. I think on the defensive side, though, it's a little bit more interesting when you start picking around. So we lost Hyde and Poyer. These were our sort of linchpin safeties, the guys that really ran that defense for several years under the McDermott era. Not easy to replace the experience, although again, physically, both of them have dropped off quite a bit. I know the Poyer's obviously gone to Miami. You'll be watching him there. He's a hell of a competitor, very bright guy, but physically not the player he was. So we had those two plus Trey White, again, Pro Bowl corner. All of them suffered pretty severe injuries over the last 2 years. So production we were getting in the secondary was not great, and I think we've replaced all of them relatively well. I suspect that it'll take a little bit of time to get the safety position worked out, because it's pretty much a full change there. But we're pretty much set at cornerback. The major concern, I think, for a lot of Bills fans is at edge. We lost Leonard Floyd. We didn't keep him. And he had a lot of production, especially earlier in the season, a lot of sack production, which we haven't replaced. I think we're gambling on the fact that Von Miller will be back to something like normal, because he gave us nothing last year, and a much beefier defensive tackle room, which is probably the strongest defensive tackle room that we've had, taking up a little of that load. So if we can replace the sack production, that would be great. We did draft Javen Solomon. I think he was in the 5th round, and he's a very much a sort of pass rush specialist. He's not going to do much for you on the early downs, but somebody who you could bring in on those 3rd and long, pin his ears back, and hopefully get something out of him. But generally speaking, it's been a bit of a mini reset. We needed to get cheaper. We need to get younger. I think they've done that. I think there's an awful lot of talent still on this roster, but some question marks remain for sure.
We talked about it in part 1 about Dalton Kincaid. I'm not saying for a second that this is going to be, a Bills team that's going to do what the Patriots did, but you saw the Patriots, you had Gronkowski, but you think about, the rest of them, Edelman, Amendola, they weren't exactly, they came up clutch at playoff, but in regular season, none of them are really like the big stars. They weren't like, obviously, had Bunny Moss for a year, but they weren't like Jerry Rice or a Tyreek Hill or a Jamar Chase. And I think that with Diggs now gone, obviously you lose that distraction, someone who wants the ball 24/7. Do you think that we're going to see Dalton Kincaid really excel this year, because he's going to be in sort of like a Travis Kelce, like a Gronk sort of role, where he is Josh Allen's main weapon of choice?
I think he will be, and that's what we're seeing in the off season so far as well. He's been the primary target. He's a real mismatch. He's got great hands, doesn't drop much, great route running. He's an incredible athlete. I think we're going to see him take a big step forward. Hey, he had a really good first year as a tight end. I think he was one of the best rookie tight end seasons that ever has been. I think he was top 10 amongst all tight ends again as a rookie. So yeah, we're all really excited about Dalton Kincaid, and I think we'll get more out of Dawson Knox. He should be healthy again. So we do have that opportunity to play 2 tight end sets and create mismatches all over the field. And I think it's going to be a combination of pass catchers that really have the answer here. I mean, we're very, very high on Khalil Shakir. He's looked very good and he's developed better and better each season. But we've also brought in Curtis Samuel, who I think, although he's had some injury problems in the past, he's very quick. He can stretch the field a little bit. He can play all over the place. And I think that's going to be really interesting, like 1-2 punch with him and Khalil Shakir. And then, I mean, I'm not massively high on Marcus Valdes-Scantling. He drops us a few too many passes for me, but he will do that field stretching job and open up the field for other players. So it's actually quite a better balanced wide receiver wide receiver core. There's more options there. We've got some short guys, we've got some taller guys, we've got some bigger body guys, especially when you throw in this draft pick in Keon Coleman, who again, he's got the ability to go up and get the ball, wins contested catches, incredible athlete, basketball background. He's already been making some really interesting catches in preseason. So I think we feel pretty good about the wide receiver room in terms of replacing that production from Davis and Diggs, and certainly the second half of the season. I think we feel good. I think the big question mark is, what does the primary cornerback of an opposition do? Because in the past they were always going to go and sit on Diggs, whereas now there's no individual standout player. They're not going to go on cover Dalton Kincaid because of that mismatch issue. So there may well be some extra pressure put on some of our receivers that perhaps would have been wide receivers 3s in the past, are suddenly playing against a cornerback 1. It'd be interesting to see how that plays out. But the reality is this team is all about Josh Allen and who's going to be throwing that ball. And he's still that dual threat quarterback. And I think as long as Josh Allen is Josh Allen, we're always going to have a chance.
Exactly, and I think the constant thing about Allen is the carelessness with the ball and the interceptions. But I want to put out there that Matt Stafford had the most interceptions in the whole of the league in 2021. What did he do? He won a Super Bowl. And Mahomes last season won a Super Bowl, had the 4th most interceptions in the whole NFL. We mentioned it a lot in part 1 about this, and I think that interceptions obviously are never great to have, but also Josh Allen, he could equally throw a pick 6, and then next play he could go and throw a 70-yard bomb. I think, for me, he is, I've said it before many times on this podcast, he's Brett Favre 2.0, arm strength. There's sometimes carelessness to throw the ball, but ultimately, as much as he can sometimes put you behind in the game, he'll bring you back straight away. So I think,
we never lose games because of Josh Allen. Never. It just doesn't happen. The net positive is outweighs the interceptions here and there from my perspective.
I just wish he wasn't in the AFC East. I think that I would love it if he came to Dolphins, for example, when he got drafted. I would absolutely love him. I really would. And he's, he is one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch, and he's a guy who's tormented me a lot of the time. I can't say I hate him because he's doing his job, but I love watching him. But I just dislike the fact that he's doing it for probably my most disliked team in the NFL, I'd say, in the Bills, with the amount of pain they've caused me the last couple of years, especially. But he is just electric, and I think people like to throw that at him. But when you're throwing up 35 points and still losing divisional round games to the Chiefs, then you can't really blame that on Josh Allen.
It's not Josh Allen. The defense has cost us in the playoffs. That's what's it. And I think let's face it. If we were drafting the NFL right now, first pick would be your friend and mine, Patrick Mahomes. The second pick could be Josh Allen. I think most GMs would take Josh Allen second.
Third for me. I still think Burrow. If you can hypothetically remove the injuries, Joe Burrow.
But he hasn't. He hasn't. Every year he gets injuries, and look at now he's painted his hair. Like Eminem. That's the problem. Josh Allen is the healthiest quarterback in the league. He's the guy who has missed the fewest games since entering the league, and Burrow goes out regularly, and he puts the Bengals in a hole. And maybe some of that's on the Bengals and the offensive line, but still, he's not. I mean, I think he's a great player. Don't get me wrong, but he hasn't remained healthy, and that's always causing them problems.
Yeah, I still think though, his 2 seasons fully healthy. He's made an AFC Championship game and a Super Bowl. So I think if he's healthy this year, they will be a team to look out for. But it's whether he is healthy, and also the run game's a bit of a concern for me for the Bengals. They haven't really replaced Joe Mixon, and
agreed.
But we talk about as well with Josh Allen. Do you think that he reminds you a lot as well, body size wise, as Cam Newton, and also you've seen Cam Newton's body deteriorate fairly quickly on him. So with the amount of hits that Josh Allen takes as a quarterback, does that worry you? The fact that he could 5 years down the line really pay the price for that?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think earlier in his career, he definitely took quite a lot of unnecessary hits. I think it's becoming less and less. If you watch him now, he's much smarter when he runs. He's much smarter at sliding. Of course, he will still gamble if he has to, but as I said, he's missed the fewest games of any quarterback since entering the league. So, although in principle, yes, he probably takes a few more hits than other guys, it hasn't had that impact on his body that you've seen in other players. He's even played pretty damn well, even carrying little niggles here and there. So I think there was a move a couple of seasons ago to start taking more off his plate. What we've seen is an increased focus on the run game, James Cook taking more load, but Josh Allen's still been the short yardage back. He's been the guy who's gone on the goal line, and that's the stuff that I think they'll be probably looking for this running back room to try and compensate for a little bit. I think it's I think Ray Davis is probably the guy that's going to take that on. Maybe Ty Johnson, but Ray Davis is a sort of more of a bowling ball type build. He's the more the between the tackles kind of guy, and I'm hoping he can take on some of that short yardage stuff. So yeah, I think that Cam Newton. It's an interesting comparison. I think Josh is a better player than Cam Newton.
100%, 100%.
And I think that he has calmed down some of his more, let's say, extraneous tendencies in time and started to let the rest of the team do more of the work. But when the chips are down, he's always going to give you that extra. So I think when we tried to take it out of his game completely, we've not seen the best of him. As I said, I would like him to be doing less of the short yardage stuff because that to me seems a little bit unnecessary if we've got the right balance in that running back room.
Yeah, I think you've got James Cook now. I think, let him cook, as they would say.
Well, and maybe another way of looking at it is we could get maybe another 10 years out of Josh Allen, or we could maybe get 7 years in the Super Bowl out of it. What would we do? What would we take?
7 years without doubt. 7 years
Exactly.
in one Super Bowl.
Yeah, so I think that he is that cheat code really in terms of the offensive play, and I think you've got to let Josh be Josh. It is what he is, and I think any Bills fan would sign up for taking him for less time if he can take us to a Super Bowl.
I totally agree, and I think that for me, I would take literally 9 losing seasons as a Dolphins fan for the Super Bowl. I know obviously people think that that's 9 horrible years, but I have never seen us win a playoff game, let alone win a Super Bowl. So if I could say like some sort of hypothetical NFL genie comes to my room in the next 10 minutes and goes, right, Andy, you've got a decision, 10 years, 10 winning seasons, 10 years you make AFC Championship games and divisional rounds, but you never make a Super Bowl or never win it. Or you have 9 seasons with 6 wins or less, but you have one season where you go 14-3, you win a Super Bowl. I take that in a heartbeat because at the end of the day, I just want to see my team win, and that is the most important thing to me. So I would happily do that because it's definitely a lot easier to see Liverpool lose games in football after winning the Premier League. It's definitely become a lot easier to take defeat because I've now seen us win the Premier League, and it's not that thing of I'm never going to see it happen. We're not going to win this year. So I think absolutely, I would take that in a heartbeat. And for the Bills as well, that's actually a great segue into one of my questions I wanted to ask you, and last Dave in part 1 was about what you think it takes to get over the line, because this team has had a lot of near misses. You've had the AFC title game lost to the Bills in the COVID season, of course, the infamous 13-second game a year later, and another divisional round loss to the Chiefs 2 years later, obviously last season. What do you think the Bills need to do to get over that hump?
To me, they've got to get better luck on health. I mean, that defense was incredibly beaten up last year. I think we were onto our 4th and 5th choice linebackers. We actually pulled a guy off the street in AJ Klein to play linebacker for us against the Chiefs. I strongly think if we were starting with Matt Milano and our first choice linebackers in that game, we would have beaten the Chiefs. We have beaten the Chiefs. We beat them in the regular season almost every year. But in the postseason, our defense has let us down, and I think it's let us down in 2 ways. One, it hasn't been healthy. As you see, we've got younger, we've got cheaper on the defensive side. We've taken out some of those older players who unfortunately weren't making it through the season healthy. The other area which is of more concern to me is that defensive line. I think it's fantastic in the defensive tackle now. I'm really happy with that room. It's really solid. It's got great depth, but at the edge positions, there's question marks. So we have Gregory Rousseau as a top tier run defender, hasn't quite turned into that elite pass rush that we want. We have AJ Panessa, who I think has been improving and gradually getting better each year, but again, he's sort of more of a 5 or 6 sack guy so far. Is he going to make that final step? We've got Von Miller, who's coming off this long-term standing injury, who was nothing like himself last year at all. The early signs are in the preseason that he might be getting back to something like his best, but we have got a lot of question marks on that in that edge position, and I think you've got to put pressure on Patrick Mahomes when the chips are down in the postseason. So if we can, I think there's even a chance that we may actually spend a bit of money before the season starts to actually beef up that room if we don't seeing what we want out of that room in the preseason. So yeah, that's the biggest issue for me is we haven't managed to get consistent pressure from that defensive line. And we've not had the depth that we needed at defensive tackle. I think they've sorted that out now. We have just too many injuries at linebacker and in the secondary. So yeah, these are all sort of if buts and maybes, but that's what's been letting us down consistently every time we got to the playoffs. It's not been the offense. It's not been Josh Allen. He's always turned up. But that defense needs to pick it up when it comes to postseason.
Absolutely. Now, we asked Dave about someone who is a Bills season ticket holder who lives in Buffalo for updates on the stadium. He talked about how much it was going to be for him, how emotional it's going to be for him when the Bills eventually move from Highmark. I want to get your take on it because you've been to a fair few Bills games in Buffalo. You've been to that stadium. I've even met you at a Bills game, albeit on the road in Detroit. You obviously go there quite a lot, and I know there's even one Bills fan that we met who moved there because of the Bills. And so I think it's scheduled at the moment for 2026 is due to be opened, the new stadium. How is that going to feel for you, the move? How are you feeling about it?
Yeah, it's a really good question. My first ever trip to that stadium, it was actually kind of emotional. I've been a Bills fan since I was a teenager, and it was always almost like a mythical place to me. As you see on TV, snow games and crazy fans. And then driving up, it was probably about a decade ago now. For the first time, I was like, "Wow, I'm actually here." And everyone kept telling me, "Oh yeah, sorry about the stadium. It's a bit of a dump. It's a bit of a dump. It's really falling apart." And I was thinking, I just don't care. It's still this sort of iconic stadium that I've been watching on my TV for a few decades. And yeah, of course, a bit crumbly here and there, and maybe the concessions aren't amazing, but that's not why I go to games. I don't care about really the food options or whatever. So I think on one hand, it will be sad because it's been a key part of, the Bills Mafia for decades and decades. I think on the other side of it is, I think everyone would welcome a nicer stadium, a bit more undercover, especially protection from the elements. I think there's 60% coverage in the new stadium. I think the biggest disappointment for the new stadium is going to be a little smaller than the current one. So at exactly the time when demand for Bills tickets has never been higher. We've got the best team that we've had since the Super Bowl years, and we're going to have fewer seats. There is some talk there'll be some standing areas, and maybe that helps compensate. So it's going to push ticket prices up, which a lot of people are very disappointed about. But the new facility looks amazing. We actually had one of the Bills beat reporters on our podcast on last week, and he was saying, he spent some time at the Spurs stadium getting a feel for that, and he was just blown away by it compared to a lot of NFL stadiums. So he thinks that the Bills' new stadium is going to be really, really top class, based on what he's heard and what he's experienced from the sort of behind the scenes at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. So I think on the one hand, it's actually kind of exciting, but it is going to be sad to say goodbye to the old place. But to me, a stadium is about the fans, and Bills Mafia is still going to be there, and that's what makes it special. It's going to be louder. I mean, I don't think I'd ever heard a louder stadium than when the Bills played Miami. I think it was week 4 or 5 last year. It was insane, and this was in this massive, drawn out bowl. What that's going to sound like, with a roof on, in the new stadium is going to be quite special. I mean, you think you were at the Bills Jags game last year, when a lot of Bills fans turned up, and it felt like a Bills home game, with maybe a third half full of Bills fans. So the new stadium full of Bills Mafia, that's going to be really special, I think.
Well, yeah, we were talking about it actually on the Commanders episode, which came out yesterday, about that being the best ever atmosphere we've experienced in London. I think, I wasn't there for the Packers game. That was reportedly very good a couple of years ago when Rodgers.
Yeah, I was there. It was good.
You were there?
Yeah, I was there at the Packers Giants game. It was really good, but not as loud as the Bills Jags.
Yeah. It's the one time I've actually felt like it's a home game. It's the one time I've been to, I want to say 7 or 8 London games now, maybe 9. But I think it's 9. But I've never ever experienced anything as loud as that. It felt like I was at a game in America. It really did. And I think because of the technology in the stadium where it sort of adds the sound and it traps sound in, I think that made it, you could really hear the Bills. The Bills fans travelled really well. I mean, it was, so I think because the Jags were there last week and it's the London team and all that, I think they obviously more went probably the week before, because the week before was definitely way more Jags and Falcons. It was really like a home game for the Jags. And the following week, I think all the Jags fans clearly used that one rather than the second one for the many. So it was
It's a
all
good point.
Bill.
I think I had a Jags fan in the stadium text me because he couldn't believe how loud it was, and he'd been at both games. Bills Mafia really did turn up. As you know, Andy, I helped run the London Bills backers a group in London, and we have a pub. We had 4 nights worth of Bills Mafia turning up. I think we peaked at about 400 people in a pub that has a capacity
Wow.
for about 100. Yeah, we took over the whole street, and this was one of about 4 or 5 pubs across London that were just full of Bills Mafia. There's only a fraction of the people that turn up on the game day, so it was quite heartwarming to see so many Bills fans in that stadium and see the Bills livery on it. It felt special. It sounded special. Shame the Bills' performance in the first half was so poor, but it really did give you a sense of what it's going to be like in that new stadium, just a little bit. And you know what Bills Mafia are like. You know how loud we are, and I think that's going to be pretty incredible in the new place.
Yeah, it does strike. I think it does strike me a lot. The new stadium, how it's projected to look. It looks just like the Tottenham stadium. I think they've obviously, from what you're saying as well, they've obviously looked at that stadium and sort of been inspired a lot.
It's the same designers. Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
same designers.
Same designers. Okay.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. That's why it looks the same because it's the same.
I
It
was
basically is.
saying it.
It's the Bills leadership went all over the world looking at stadiums, and they went to Tottenham and said, "This is what we need. This is a variant of this will be perfect." So it's essentially very similar to what you experience at Tottenham.
Interesting. So we will head to the final part of the show, which will be our win, loss, tie section. So for those of you that aren't familiar with the process by now, each fan who comes on the show will predict their team's record by going through each game and answering with a win, loss, tie answer. Now, the Bills went 11-6 in 2023, and of course, Charlie, you were on last year's.
What did I predict? Do you remember?
Yeah, that's what I'm getting to you now. So do you remember what it is?
What I predicted?
Yeah.
I would have imagined I predicted about either 12-5 or 11-6. Is what I would guess.
13-4, you predicted.
Well, did I? Yeah, I was
Yeah.
pretty aggressive.
Only 2 wins. Only 2 wins difference. So respectable. And I think obviously you're hoping this year. I think last year, Rory with the Bengals would have been bang on right if where he was going that Bills Bengals game had happened. I think obviously that threw up the whole thing. But I'm pretty sure your prediction the year before was pretty much almost right as well. So I think you had a good year the year before last. So you'd be hoping this year to get it bang on this time.
On. Yeah, fingers crossed.
So week 1, you host the Arizona Cardinals. Win, loss, or tie?
That's a win for me. I think the Cardinals will be a better team this year, but the Bills are at home. We have a better quarterback. I think we've got a better coach. And I think on opening weekend, that'll be a relatively comfortable win. But I suspect that we'll see better out of the Cardinals this year than we have in recent years.
I totally agree. Week 2 is a road game at Miami Dolphins.
So I have this down as a loss. I think that we will probably split the games with Miami, and I think earlier in the season will be when Miami are at their strongest. We've seen Miami tend to sort of lose a bit of momentum towards the end of the season, obviously when they have to travel to perhaps colder climes, or they need to lean a little bit more on a running game. And so I think that this will be the one where Miami will be fired up to beat Buffalo, especially after the end of last season. I'm sure your coach will have a few tricks up his sleeve, and that'll be a loss for me.
I just wish it was a daytime game because we last beat you a couple of years ago. Only Josh Allen's second loss against the Dolphins. That was week 3.
It was baking hot.
Hot sun.
Yeah, we had players passing out on the sidelines. Yeah.
That's what we need. And instead we got it. I think it'll still be very warm, but it won't be quite as warm. So I think that would be a shame. But I think we still win this game. Spoiler into our Dolphins episode later on in the off season. But yeah, I just think that we didn't like playing you guys in the cold. You didn't like playing us in the sun. So I think it's a very respectable. Probably.
I know for any Bills fans watching this is that it's fairly likely that our pub will be open in the middle of the night for that game. So we are planning to open for it.
Oh, maybe I'll come down and spoil the party.
You can watch from outside through the window.
I'll come in fourth quarter when you score like a touchdown to go 20 points up. I'll be like, week 3 is a rematch of the London game last year as you host the Jags.
Yeah, I've got it down as a win. I mean, honestly, our record against the Jags is terrible. We've lost the last 2 times we played them. We just do not turn up against the Jags. So I feel like we're owed a victory. Just the Lord of averages, we're due to beat the Jags. I think yeah, I'm not convinced about them this season. Honestly, I think that they've dropped off a little bit. Their defense usually causes us some trouble, but I'm not sure how exciting they really are on offense. And I think it might take them a little bit while for Brian Thomas Jr. to get going. So yeah, I've got that down as a win.
We don't really tend to. We are going to do our season predictions episode with Luke and Steve a week before the season starts, and one thing we never really tend to predict is the first coach to get fired. And I genuinely think Peterson could be that candidate because we've talked about in the last episode with Olivia in the Jets podcast where the Steelers' last 8 games is brutal. Now I want to go through the Jags first 8 and 9 games, considering how badly the season ended last year, going 8-3, whatever it was, and then missing the playoffs altogether. So their first, before their bye week in week 12, they've got Dolphins on the road, then Browns, then Bills away, then Texans on the road, then the Colts, then the Bears in obviously in London. You've got the Patriots, you've got the Packers, you've got the Eagles, and you've got the Vikings, Lions before bye, and then you've even got the Texans and then the Jets in 2 weeks after that with Aaron Rodgers. So
That's horrific.
It's an awful
It's
schedule. Yeah, it's terrible. And I think that there could be easily a bit of unrest about how the way the season ended with Doug Peterson and the players. And I do think that this could be a horrendous start.
We get to see them get the best out of Trevor Lawrence. I mean, obviously they made the playoffs a couple of seasons ago, and we're looking pretty good. But I still don't think we've seen him reach his ceiling. But yeah, and I agree. I mean, given that schedule, that's absolutely murderous. So I think you got a good shout there. I might go and put some money on that.
I might too. Week 4 is probably your hardest game on paper. On the road to the Ravens.
Yeah, I've got that down as a defeat. We always play the Ravens pretty hard and pretty well. We've actually had a pretty decent record against them recently, but I just think they're very, very strong this year. I think they can get at you from all angles. I think it's going to take a little time for this Bills defense to settle down. I think I mean, the interesting will be obviously they've lost their defensive coordinator, so what impact that has. But I have actually seen the Bills beat the Ravens in Baltimore with a last minute field goal a couple of seasons ago. So we've got it in us, but yeah, I mean, you can't win them all. And I think this is one of the most difficult games we play on the schedule. And so yeah, I've got that down as a defeat.
Okay, so in week 5 is another road game, but this time against the Houston Texans.
So I've got that down as a win. I think the Texans will be really good this season. I mean, obviously you look at them on paper, they look really well stacked, but they've had, I just think that the Bills is a bit more of a battle-hardened team. I think this will be a narrow win. I think there'll be a lot of people wanting to win because Diggs is on the other side, and I suspect they'll feel pretty still. It is a bit of a toss-up game for me. I do think the Texans will probably win that division, but I've got the Bills narrowly winning that one.
I don't know whether you saw today or maybe yesterday, footage came out of a fight in training with Derek Stingley and Dalton Schultz.
Yeah, I'm going to call it the Diggs effect.
Yeah,
I was poison in the dressing room.
Yeah, they called him. They're the first team to come into training camp, and they're already having fights. That is definitely a Diggs effect. Week 6, you're on the road again, but this time against the New York Jets.
So I've got that as a win. I think the Jets. So who knows, right? I mean, who knows what this is going to look like? We obviously threw the game away in MetLife last year, having injured Aaron Rodgers for the fourth play of the game. But I'm not convinced by the Jets. I feel like Jets have a way of jetting things up, and I'm not convinced that Aaron Rodgers, on coming off this injury, another year older, we haven't seen him play proper competitive football for an awful long time. And I'm not sure he's going to come back at full strength, and that's what they're going to need. I mean, if he is there and he's playing at full Aaron Rodgers MVP level, then everybody else better brace themselves because that roster is stacked. But I'm just not convinced that's what we're going to see. And that's what we're going to see. I think it's also he's another year older and he's playing on the worst turf in the NFL at MetLife Stadium. That turf is notorious for injuries. So I'm not sold on the Jets. A lot of people, it's their dark horse, but it's a long time since we saw Aaron Rodgers playing at an MVP level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it can go one of two ways, because Rodgers' last season of Green Bay was terrible, but it still wouldn't put him top 5 in all-time Jets passing yards for a season, which is incredible it shows how good he's been in his career. But yeah, I'm in one of two ways, because on one hand I'm thinking, if he gets back and he's just even half of what he is, that's better than any Jets quarterback in the last 20 years.
Well, I think the Jets would like to get, if he stays healthy, they like to get better towards the end of the season, I think, because you essentially still got a new quarterback in a remade offense that's never really played with him before. So I think they'll be at their strongest later in the season if he stays healthy. But who knows?
That is a thing, because I've seen him hobbling around in OTAs, and you have to be worried about that. And obviously, just a player come back from an injury in the first place, you never know they're going to come back as the same player. Just ask RG3.
Yep.
So, moving on to week 7, as you host the Tennessee Titans.
So I've got that as a win. Quite hopefully one of the easier games on our schedule. I think the Titans have obviously been thrown up in the air and spun around. So we historically don't have a great record against the Titans, but I think they're an awful lot weaker than they used to be, and they're in the rebuild phase. And I think the Bills should win that comfortably, I hope.
It's incredible how many away games you have. So you've got
it's all in the season, isn't it?
Yeah. It's amazing. You got Jags at home week 3, and then you've got, after that, you've only got home games in week 7 and week 9 before your week 11 game against the Chiefs, which is incredible.
Yep.
But then obviously it towards the end of the season becomes a lot more favourable to you with more home games. But week 8 isn't a road game. It's against the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, I think that's a toughish one, but I suspect that Bills should have too much. I think it's a better quarterback, better coach, better overall roster. I think the receiver hooks always sort of, there or thereabouts in terms of being competitive, but I think, again, they're in a bit of a rebuild phase, and so I feel pretty good about that one.
Well, you did allude to your answer earlier, but you take on the Dolphins at home in week 9.
Yeah, so I have that as a win. I think they'll split, and I think the Bills at home, it's been a long time since the Dolphins beat the Bills at home. Let's put it that way. And until they go and do it, I'm sold on the Bills winning that game.
I'm just thankful it's in week 9 and not week 18, because I think it's our best. To have it at week 9 is a great opportunity to actually do it, because I wouldn't back it at all in a snowy high mark stage in week 17. I wouldn't trust that at all. But give me week 9 and we've got a chance, because it might still be fairly respectable weather-wise. So, week 10, you're taking on the Colts at Lucas Oil Stadium.
Yeah, this is one of those ones where you feel like this is the banana skin, really. I feel like the Bills will win that, but Anthony Richardson is a wild card. I think we're excited about what we've seen so far, but he's only played 4 games so far. So he's essentially going into this game, he's still going to be a rookie. Sean McDermott's got a very good record against rookie quarterbacks, which essentially is what he'll be. So I have that as a win, but it's also one of those ones I think could be absolute box office for people to watch.
And speaking of which, actually, week 11, it's taking on the Chiefs at home, which seems to be every year at this point. I don't know how it's happening, but you seem to play them every year.
We do play them every year, but this is actually the first time we've played them regular season at home for a really long time. So we usually play them on the road. So again, the Bills typically beat the Chiefs in the regular season. It's in the playoffs where we start to have struggles, where the grind of the season's worn us down, and we start to get a lot of injuries. I mean, we've improved the depth, but I think it's going to take a bit of time for that depth to come through. This to me is an absolute coin toss. We've seen some absolute classics between these two teams. I've got it as a win, but wouldn't surprise me at all if it went the other way. But I think that home advantage will just be the difference.
Yeah, I can see that. So week 12 is a bye week, as mentioned before. So week 13, you're going from the Super Bowl winners to the Super Bowl runners-up at home again against the 49ers.
Yeah, so this is a funny one, right? So I would have normally expected us to lose this game. I feel like this is one of the toughest games in our schedule. However, the Bills will be coming off their bye week. and the 49ers essentially will have just come off having to travel to Green Bay. So usually coming off the bye week, we're in pretty strong position. So again, these are two really good teams, could theoretically make the Super Bowl. I think the 49ers are a better team on paper than the Bills. Obviously, we have Josh Allen, which is that wild card. But I think the Bills will actually beat the 49ers because we will just be healthier and fitter having come off our bye week, with the 49ers having an awful lot of travel, having to go to Green Bay, then go back to California, and then come to Buffalo. I think that's a big ask for them.
Okay, so then week 14 is a road game against the LA Rams.
Yeah, so I've got us losing this game. We beat them a couple of years ago, first game of the season, and they did so really well. But I think, we've got to travel to the West Coast. That's never very easy. Sean McVay is a hell of a coach. This Rams team, I think, has outperformed its roster. He seems to be able to manage to reinvent this team. I just think it's just going to be a step too far. I think there'll be so much emphasis on the Chiefs and the 49ers. It's an out of conference game, and I think levels will just drop a little bit, and I suspect we might lose that one.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think don't sleep on Jared first. Obviously, been brought in to be potentially Aaron Donald's replacement, and I think he looks an absolute stud. Obviously, it's big shoes to fill because Aaron Donald is, for me personally, in my lifetime, the best defensive player I've seen play football.
Incredible.
And probably the top 3, if not top 2, defensive tackles of all time. Maybe his best. I think for me personally, second best defensive player I think in history. I think personally, and I think he probably is the best DT of all time. So big things to fill for him. I think he can also be an edge potentially as well. But I think he is going to be an absolute. I think you think about some players like Mike Parsons going 11. You think, how the hell does that happen? Aaron Donald going 12th overall, and I think Jared Verse going where he did in the draft. I forget where it is now, but it wasn't early on. I think people will look at that in the next few years and go, wow. How do these teams not look at him and buy him? I think he'll be a great addition. I think potentially defensive rookie of the year, but I'll save that for our predictions episode. Week 15 is a road game against one of the stars of the new Netflix series, receiver Amon St. Brown and the Detroit Lions.
I think the Bills might lose this one. The Bills obviously beat them in Detroit on Thanksgiving a couple of seasons ago. Game that you and I were at, if I remember correctly. And I think that this Lions team is really battle hardened. Bills Mafia will travel well down to Detroit. It's not that far a drive. It's an easy trip to make. But I just get the sense that this Lions team is on that upswing. They seem to be getting stronger and stronger each season, and you can't win them all. We only just narrowly beat them a couple of seasons ago when I think the Lions were not as good as they are today, and I think this might be a step too far. So I imagine them losing on the road against the Rams and then against the Lions.
Well, that is, to stay stands, the best NFL game I've watched. In terms of how the game actually went, it was, I think, the best I've ever experienced. I've been to quite a few stinker games. I think this one's the best ever game I've witnessed in person.
It was a hell of an ending, right? I mean, there was that amazing dig down the seam and then the all-on field goal. It was quite something.
Amazing. And for most people, unlike myself, it is an easy drive unless your bus is cancelled.
Indeed. Well,
yeah,
we managed to sort you out. Bills Mafia managed to come to your aid, my friend.
Yeah, and of course, I did mention the story before, previously, when Dave's come on. Charlie's the reason how it all happened, of course. You did organise through Twitter, through Kristen, and then Tim, and shout out to Tim as well. What a guy. 6 hours driving a stranger can't be an easy thing to do, but I'm always so thankful for that experience, because otherwise I would have been either stranded or going on a 17-hour bus with 5 changes. It would have been horrendous. So I'm very glad that didn't happen, because that would have been much more of a rush. I think I was meant to be arriving, if I had got that, 9 a.m. on the day of the game. It ended up being I was in the Airbnb or property by 7 p.m. It was amazing. So I can't thank you and everyone else. And of course, Dave wouldn't be on this podcast this episode if it wasn't for that. And I stayed at his house in Buffalo. Kept in contact with many of them I was with, Karen and Kristen and all the others that were there. I had an amazing 4 days in Detroit, and I can't thank yourself and everyone else who got involved in that Twitter exchange enough, really.
This is what we do, you see, even for Dolphins fans. This is what Bills Mafia is all about.
I was sort of thinking, when do I tell him I'm a Dolphins fan? Because I think they definitely thought I was a Bills fan or a Lions fan, and then the bombshell dropped. I think some point in the house that they're staying with a Dolphins fan, but it's all good for us to get. And I think as well that's the good thing about NFL. Like in football, you couldn't do that if you say like maybe not West Ham Millwall, but you think about like say two
United
rivals,
Liverpool or something. United
Liverpool,
Liverpool,
or maybe like
present.
I kind of think I kind of think Packers Bears is Man Liverpool, and I think I kind of view maybe Dolphins Bills as maybe something with that rivalry that's not really intense, but still intense enough. Maybe like a Liverpool Everton, or maybe
like a Forest Leicester or something like that.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, or maybe like a Villa Birmingham or something. It's
yeah.
And I don't think you could tell a Birmingham fan you're going to drive a Villa fan 6 hours to get to St Andrews.
No chance.
You're going to stay with us for 4 days. Absolutely no chance. There's no chance of doing this. That's if you want to stay alive for it. That is. So you've amazingly got 2 Patriots games in the last 3 games, and the first one is at home in week 16.
Yeah, I feel pretty good about the Patriots, I have to be honest. I mean, they are in rebuild central. Who knows what their quarterback position is going to be by this point? But yes, I mean, there's not a lot of offensive talent on that team, to be polite. And so, yeah, I feel pretty good about. I think the defense will be elite, but that'll keep them in a lot of games. I think they'll win more games than people expect. Although I think they do have a pretty tough schedule, to be honest. But I do think that the Bills should be able to win that one and the one at the end of the season as well, I hope.
Well, I'll give that a win now anyway. Mark that in the books. Yep. So, going into that Week 17 game against the New York Jets.
So, I've got this one as a defeat. This is a bit of a guess. I feel that we haven't lost enough games. This feels a little aggressive so far, as I was a couple of seasons ago. So, I think I'll put this down as a defeat. I think, if Aaron Rodgers stays healthy to this point, then, they are going to win their share of games because that roster is, it is pretty well stacked. And if Rodgers can stay fit for this amount of time and actually embed into this Jets offensive system, then they're going to be winning games by the end of the year. I think early on is going to be when they're more vulnerable, when it's still trying to work out the kinks. But later on, I think this is when they're going to stop winning games. So I've got that down as a defeat.
So, like Dave, you've also gone for 12-5.
It feels a game too aggressive, if I'm honest. But I think it's because that 49ers game and the Chiefs game, those are coin toss games, right? I'd add the Texans game as well as another coin toss game, and I wouldn't have normally picked the Bills to beat the 49ers. It's only because we're coming off the bye week. So I think the line at Vegas set is 10.5, which feels about right. I would have, if I hadn't looked at the order of the schedule or anything else, I would have said 11-6. But when I went through it and I saw that 49ers game was off the bye, then I feel, and especially because they've also going to travel to Green Bay the week before, which is a massive game for them. I feel actually a bit better about that. And one other thing I didn't mention before is that actually McDermott has an incredible record against Shanahan tree coaches. Like, it is really exceptional. I think he's the best in the league. It's something like 30-2 or something like that. It's something crazy. Yeah, it's really incredible. So when you look at anyone off the Shanahan tree, the Bills have some kind of incredible record. So there's something that McDermott can do on that defensive side of the ball, which is a little bit like the kryptonite for the 49ers and other coaches off that tree. So yeah, it's surprising, but that's the case.
I bet you wish that they were on the AFC, because you think about the main two of McVay and Shanahan, and
I know, right?
I bet you wish you could play them in the playoffs rather than Andy Reid.
Well, the AFC is so stacked, isn't it? I mean, it's just it's ridiculous now. I mean, it's the quality on the AFC is unbelievable.
Yeah, it's definitely
even in the AFC. I mean, it's incredible, right? I mean, you've got 3 absolutely insane teams in the AFC East.
Even with that, though, I do think that it's a stronger conference, but I would back the Niners to beat all of them but the Chiefs. I think the NFC has 2 or 3 really good teams. You could argue the Lions could beat them as well, but
Brock Purdy's a lot better than people think he is. I mean, people say he's a system quarterback. He is mobile. He is clutch. He mentally reads the game really well. I think he's much better than people think.
Absolutely. I had him 8th or 9th in our quarterback ranking after with Sam Moore's. I think, all you can ask for a quarterback. It's all good. I try not to put too under the shade, but it's all good being a passing yards leader, but then not doing it when it matters in big games. I think Brock Purdy, same as Jordan Love, albeit one game, have proved that they can do. And CJ Stroud has done more in one playoff game than Dak's done, Kirk's done, Tua's done anything. So, yeah, I think with Purdy, yes, the system quarterback thing I hate because every quarterback is playing in a system.
Of course.
And I just feel like, yeah, he's not got the arm talent of Mahomes, or he's not got the mobility of Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson, and he's maybe not got the accuracy of Tua. But what you can guarantee from Purdy is that every big game he's played in, pretty much he's performed well. And even the ones he's lost against the Chiefs, for example, he was still good in that game. And I always think about the Packers and Lions comebacks, about just how clutch he was in those games and how he ended up, driving the team down the field and getting the wins from two improbable positions.
Executing the game plan is also part of being a quarterback, right? So yeah, as I said, I think he's massively underrated and think he deserves to get paid in pretty short order.
I agree. So you've given your record 12-5. That is definitely more than enough to make the playoffs. If you make the playoffs, which you should do with that record, how far will you go in the postseason?
So I don't think most Bills fans believe we're going to make the Super Bowl. I think they could. I think they're one of probably 8-9 teams that could make the Super Bowl. But I think that there's an awful lot of change on this roster. I think that the defense is still going to take a little time to settle down. I'm not convinced that we've got enough edge rusher. I think you need that absolute superstar pass rusher to compete when you're up against the absolute very best. And I think the Bills have been found wanting in the playoffs against the Chiefs, especially. I think that the Bengals playoff loss was a bit of a special case because they just come off that. They were incredibly beaten up. They had the trauma of the season, which was pretty bad, obviously, with the Damar Hamlin situation. So, but I think I would like to see them get to the AFC Championship game. I think that would be fantastic. If I was placing my money on it, I would say it's going to be Chiefs and Ravens again. But I think probably divisional round will be about par for this team that's, as I said, undergone a bit of a mini reset.
Yeah, fair enough. I think that's a fairly respectable prediction. That is where we'll end part 2 of our Bills podcast and end the Bills podcast altogether. Thank you to Dave in part 1, and thank you, Charlie, for part 2 for coming on.
You're very welcome. Always good to be here, Andy.
Always good to have you on, as usual, even if you do support that team in blue. As said in the start of the part 2, do give Charlie a follow both on his own social, which you can see if you are watching on YouTube, Charlie_sport if you are listening on audio, and also follow the Bills from Afar podcast as well, and the London Bills backers, which Charlie's mentioned as well. In the meantime, this has been our Buffalo Bills season preview with myself, as ever, your host, Andy Davis. This has been our Bills fan, Charlie Nelson, as well as David Kaprosch, and we will see you guys on next.